Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of a state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.
I never cease to be astonished how unique and varied are the talents of Louisianians. Now, I'm sitting here with a gentleman who, typical civilian, one might say. He's Colonel John R. Bourgeois, who's just retired from the Marine Corps. But Colonel Bourgeois had a rather interesting job. He was commandant of the President's own, the Marine Corps Band. Wow. How did a boy from Metairie, Louisiana, how did that happen, Colonel?
Well, I was at Loyola and a music major. In 1956, I went into the Marine Corps. And I
Just to get your service behind
service
you.
out of the way,
Of course.
right? And I went through basic training, and then I was attached to a band in San Francisco that doesn't exist any longer, in the Department of the Pacific in 1957. And then as luck would have it, I won an audition for the band in Washington, the President's Band. And I really didn't know that much about this band. But when I arrived and heard this band, I said, oh my goodness, this is I think from that day and till the day I retired, what little hair I had in the back of my neck would stand up every time I heard it. It was an incredible band.
There is nothing like Hail to the Chief by that band.
Right. The band is associated with the presidency. It's the oldest band in the United States. Actually, the oldest performing musical organization in the United States.
I think Thomas Jefferson started the thing.
Thomas Jefferson is considered the godfather of the band.
Colonel, do you remember the first engagement that you as a young Marine played in the band?
One of the very first was as a French horn player, and we were at the White House in the East Room playing for the entertainment for a state dinner for the Eisenhowers. And the guest of honor that evening were the young Japanese royal couple, young Crown Prince and Princess of Japan. And interestingly, about 34 years later, they came back as the Emperor and Empress of Japan, and I was the leader of the band. So we'd say that we both advanced in our positions.
You had both done real well. I want to ask you about some presidents, because you played, performed for so many over a 40-year period, in fact. I want to ask you about some of our more musical presidents. And everybody's mind, when I think of a president and music, I think of Harry S. Truman and that piano.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your memories of Truman?
Well, of course, Truman had been president prior to my being there, but I did see him when he came back. But there's some famous stories of the band, which, you know, we keep the lore within the family.
Yes.
When the White House was being renovated, everything happened in Blair House. And so there were rather smaller functions, but we always had a small string ensemble or small ensembles of the band performing, and often the president would join in playing at the piano with the groups.
He would.
He would, and also something that probably, I don't think has happened since the Truman time, was that he would also send trays of martinis over to the band that would, our orchestra as they were playing.
So he was exactly as we envisioned, a regular down-to-earth guy.
He was indeed.
Now, Nixon was a pianist.
Nixon was a pianist. He, and I don't think the public knew that much, and there was a wonderful time when we were accompanying the Gridiron Orchestra. The Gridiron Club in Washington does the satirical dinners, right? Yeah. And the Marine Orchestra accompanied them. Well, the President Nixon and Vice President Agnew had gotten together and secretly rehearsed together, and the curtains opened, and there were two pianos on the stage with Nixon and Agnew playing this new Southern strategy. And so Nixon would be playing and singing, and he'd stop and he'd ask Agnew to play what he would consider the new Southern strategy, and Agnew would play Dixie.
Oh, that's so funny. And then, of course, our current president,
Yes.
President Clinton plays the saxophone.
He plays the saxophone, and he's very, very knowledgeable about music, band music in particular. He was a very accomplished young high school musician.
Really?
And he never would, he would always stop by the band and talk. He would want to talk music. Interestingly, I think for the band personnel, you might know that their president not only knows Lincolnshire Posey intimately, but he can sing all the words to Lord Melbourne.
Really?
Really?
Sir, over the years, you got to know a lot of the first ladies. I'm
Yes.
sure you worked with them on planning various occasions.
Well,
music
yes, the First Lady actually sort of runs the house from the point of entertaining socially, and so musically we come very much in her purview.
Tell us about some of the first ladies of legend and lore.
Well, I think one of the, shall we say, the social office had decided that during the Kennedy administration that the Chancellor of Germany was visiting, that they wanted the band to play sort of Bavarian Papa band music at some point in the dining room and to be dressed in lederhosen. And we thought, well, I don't think so, but those are the wishes. So the assistant director ordered this costume, which came from Hollywood, of lederhosen, and unfortunately, I was the only person that fit. So I had to go in Mrs. Kennedy's presence, dressed in these lederhosen, and she knew nothing of the idea, but the staff had developed it for her, and she sort of looked at me, and I'm afraid my knees must have betrayed me, and she said to the assistant director, she says, "Captain, I think your own good uniforms would be more appropriate."
She did. So was she as elegant as we read?
She was
and are
indeed.
Told?
She was indeed.
An elegant lady.
Yes, she was.
And then, how about Pat Nixon? Very quiet.
Very quiet and very charming lady. And very. Each of the first ladies have been lovely, because we're sort of we could say we're the court musicians or the house musicians and a part of the family, and so they've always been very lovely people.
Were you always treated well at the White House? The band I'm
absolutely.
talking about, when you all performed,
Yes.
were you well treated?
Yes.
You weren't made to feel second class, or second rate?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Which president do you feel appreciated you all the most?
I think in a way each of them has. Carter knew quite a lot about music. In fact, he probably since Jefferson there's been no more educated man musically, which is very interesting.
I've never heard that
Well,
before.
you know, I'd read somewhere that he had classical music in the background in the Oval Office, and that he was a fan of Wagner. And so I asked him one day, he was sort of leaning against one of the columns we were playing and listening very, very attentively. And I said, "Mr. President, I understand that you enjoy Wagner." And also in particular, it said Tristan and Isolde. And I said, "Perhaps we should put something in the orchestra folder." And I realized this is a small chamber orchestra with few winds. And he says, "Yes." He says, "You know, maybe the Prelude to Act 3. Now,
Wow.
the only thing in Tristan that could fit that size ensemble would be the Prelude to Act 3 with the strings and the English horn.
So he was really knowledgeable.
He knew of which he was speaking.
Do you know we had never been told that about his music?
There's something else about that you haven't been told, and actually the press kept reporting that he did not have honors. He'd done away with Hail to the Chief. Remember, he carried his attaché case himself and his laundry, and that he had done away with his honors. That's not true. He didn't have honors everywhere he went outside, but every time that presidential honors for state arrivals in the House, what have you, he always had his honors.
What was the British royalty like when they came visiting?
Well, I recall the Queen's visit in the Bicentennial year, which was, you know, quite a big thing. We played all around the country, but especially during that time, I had music. I was in charge of the as White House liaison with the band in those days, and so I had music everywhere a band on the south lawn, an orchestra in the grand foyer, a harp and flute in the diplomatic entrance, a dance combo in the state dining room, and these were all playing in the house. There were a huge number of guests, much larger. Then PBS was broadcasting throughout the day. Well, you may have heard the story. I'll give you the true happening. On the combo was playing in the state dining room, and they were playing a Rodgers and Hart medley, and which a medley being that one tune would go into another. Well, with a big crowd around, and all of a sudden the crowd parted, and the president led the Queen into the dining room, and the combo already playing. And then he evidently asked her to dance, and they started dancing. Well, fine. Except that I noticed, I said, uh-oh, the music that they're dancing to, it already started, was Rodgers and Hart's That's Why the Lady is a Tramp. And I'm thinking...
That's as good a story as I've heard.
Well, the thing is, contrary to what has been reported, no one knew it at the time, except perhaps us. But a review of the PBS tapes a couple of weeks later, some smart person picked it up.
Was it erased?
No, it's still on. I think it's still on record, but we did remove the medley from the dance band book.
Let me ask you, when President Clinton's second inauguration, that had to be the strangest feeling for you, because suddenly you weren't conducting that band for the first time in 18 years, all those inaugurations as presidents. How did you feel?
Well, I was very pleased to watch it. It's an incredible situation at the time, as you well know. You cannot make a mistake because you're in front of God and everybody, so to speak. But it was very interesting to watch, and yes, there's a certain degree of poignancy and missing it.
Yes.
But I felt very happy that Colonel Foley was enjoying his first inaugural.
Sir, what about Princess Di when she came to the White House?
Princess Di came. I think I remember that she was the most vibrant and incredibly brilliant lady I'd ever seen. I mean, truly, you just saw this shining, lovely person. And after the dinner, I'm not sure it was the dinner reception, John Travolta was there, and we were playing. We had a dance band playing, and then he asked her to dance, and it was just one of the most magical things I ever recall happening.
It was like a movie, except it was real.
It was real. It was real.
What was the most elaborate function that you all ever performed for at the White House?
Gus, I think almost every one of them can be, in a way.
It's the White House.
It's the White House, yeah. Right. And also you approach every performance there with I've not done this before. You can't take anything for granted, and you give your best, just as the preparation for the guests. I think one of the and as an example of that, what goes into planning something, even to the point of the decor. I came in one day, and the White House was absolutely covered with these incredible chrysanthemums everywhere, and someone else said, "Well, isn't this wonderful?" It was fall, and chrysanthemums blooming in. And someone came running in then a hushed conversation. All of a sudden, and then all the flowers were being taken out. And I asked why, and they said, "Well, this dinner is for Italy, and in Italy, chrysanthemums are the flowers of the dead."
Oh my
And so
goodness.
this, it would have made quite an impact or a statement. So roses appeared magically.
Are the White House facilities for decorating and so on, are they tremendous beyond our imagination?
Yeah, it's taken care of wonderfully. The Park Service does a lot, and the staff there, obviously. And I'm sure, like the Horticultural Association or something, works on the flower decorations and the staff. But it's really just a beautiful place and beautifully maintained.
Did you have any interesting experiences, either as a member of the band or its conductor, director, during wartime, where you had unusual?
Well, no, actually, I other than maybe Desert Storm,
yes.
And we played the the big parade. It was a very short war, thankfully.
How about funerals for presidents?
Yes, the most I think devastating moment we ever had was the Kennedy funeral.
Tell me about that. Your memory of
Well, my personal memory, I was a kid. I was at the Library of Congress working on some music at the, as a matter of fact, working on a Mozart aria for our baritone singer. And I recall working at a rare book desk, and I heard someone coming in, tiptoeing back and forth to the head of at the desk, and something about, oh, he's at the hospital, oh, he's dead. And I just assumed that someone in the library had had maybe an attack. And so I walked up and inquired, and he said, the president had been shot. And I instantly left there and turned the radio on in the car. And they were playing funeral music, the Verdi Requiem or something. And I knew at that time of the day there was no reason to have that. And I knew that, that had happened.
Did you all march in that funeral cortege?
Yes, we were at Mrs. Kennedy's request. We led the cortege.
Wow. They were a different couple, weren't they? There was something magical.
Well, I think
their youth.
It was as it's been paraphrased, that this was a Camelot. Even the White House itself. Times really changed to a degree. I recall during the Kennedy administration, the Casals, when Casals came,
Pablo Casals, yes,
and gave this recital, and this in itself was dynamically different than anything that had happened before.
That a foreign artist, even a virtuoso, would be brought in.
Well, especially Casals really had not really been in the States as much. Remember, he'd been in Puerto Rico. He sort of
yes, no,
he didn't like our position on the Spanish War. Mm-hmm. So, but he came to give this recital, and all of the luminaries, musical luminaries, were there. In fact, Dale Harpham, who was assistant director, then was conducting the orchestra, and Ormandy came in, Bernstein, and then Stokowski with his hair down to his shoulders, and Stokowski looked at Harpham. He says, "My goodness, Captain, where's your sword?" And Harpham said, "Maestro, I don't need a sword. We're playing Brahms." But
wonderful.
We went in, and we musicians got to stay right on the wings, so to speak, by the door, and heard this recital. And it was just absolute magic. And Casals came out. We went down to the mezzanine with him, and he was weeping. And he sort of held us and said he had played an encore, which was something that his brother had written, I think, called Song of the Birds. And so he says, "You may wonder why I weep." And he said, "I've just played the Song of the Birds, but to me, it's the Song of the Exile." So this made, it was a big sort of political statement, and it was an incredible experience that he had
As
played.
a musician, when he played, were you aware totally that you were in the presence of virtuosity, genius?
Well, just, his musical aura was there. And of course we knew of him.
Now, let's talk about Colonel Bourgeois, life now. Tell us what you're up to, Colonel.
Well, I'm at Loyola right now. I'm working with the wind ensemble and the students, and also we're bringing a lot of the high school students in toward the end of the week, and they're going to join the Loyola Wind Ensemble, and we're going to give a concert.
What a thrill for those kids, though, to have the opportunity,
too,
but of working with you. My goodness, I wanted to ask you something. Now, the Colonel retired after 40 years in the United States Marine Corps. I'm not going to give you his age, but I am going to tell you his dad is living, is fine, just had a cataract operation, and Colonel Bourgeois issued a warning to people driving. Right,
my father is 94 years old this month, and he's just had this cataract operation, and I want all of you who are driving in the vicinity of Metairie, he's out there.
That's wonderful. Sir, another Louisianian was a famous Marine in addition to Colonel Bourgeois.
Yes, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, Robert Barrow.
Yes.
And I have the distinction and the great honor of having been selected as director of the Marine Band by General Barrow. And
that sounds political to me. Suddenly I'm suspicious.
We can say that Louisiana connection worked.
Works. And of course, the present Secretary of the Navy.
Yes, Secretary Dalton. And actually, at the end of my career, Secretary Dalton gave me the Distinguished Service Medal.
Did he really? Yes. I did not know that. And his predecessor, Secretary O'Keefe, a Louisianian. We're a remarkable people, aren't we, Colonel?
Yes, as we always say, first you start with a roux.
First you start with a roux. That's exactly right. Sir, looking back, could John Bourgeois have gone into any other career that would have given him this pleasure?
Well, Gus, you know, I've often said, especially, I achieved my dream, and I probably should have paid someone to have my job. It was wonderful.
But had anyone told this private, when you went into the band, were you a private?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I was a private into the Marine Corps and made PFC in boot camp.
That one day he would be colonel, conductor of that band. That's about a 147-piece band, isn't it? It's a huge organization. Would you have believed them? Were you a man of ambition?
No, I don't really think that I strive to do that. It just happened.
Now, Colonel, what have you enjoyed doing in your spare time over the years? I would think that the responsibility of being in charge of that organization, given its specific audience and its patron, the President and the First Lady of the United States, that's pretty heady, and that can apply tremendous pressure. What would you do to relax?
Well, I guess in the years I was director, I found a great place outside of Washington, in Little Washington, Virginia. And it was basically an old farm shack with two wonderful stone chimneys and some land that had been totally overgrown. And I cleared it and worked. I terrorized the land. And unfortunately, a couple of years after that, I had a fire and the place burned, and so I built a log cabin kit on the same site.
Did you really?
And I love it out there. That's been my therapy.
Do you still have it?
I still have it.
And will you go back there?
I will go back, yes.
It's your record.
It is indeed.
Well, Colonel Bourgeois, welcome home, and all of Louisiana joins me in saying how very proud you've made every one of us, and the President's own is also Louisiana's own. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gus.
Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of a state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or send 1995 to Louisiana Legends, care of Louisiana Public Broadcasting, 7860 Anselmo Lane, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70810. Please allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery.